Page 192. Oops, where's my marker? Page 1. Where are my fancy colors? Hold on, everybody. We'll pause. Alright, page 192. That's better. Number 31. F of x equals the natural log of some big chunky thing. X times square root of x squared plus 1. Okay, always remember that's like the angle in a trig expression. Where's the speaker in this thing? I always feel like I'm going to cover it up. So it's like the angle in a trig expression, which means it's got to stay with that. You got to treat it as one big thing. Okay. So now, take the derivative. Derivative of a natural log is 1 over whatever you had in parentheses. So I have 1 over x times. I'm going to go ahead and write that radical as a 1/2 exponent. Okay, that's that. Times, as always, the derivative of what's inside. Now, what's inside here, you have to use product rule, because I have a variable times something else. Okay, so when I multiply this, it's times product rule. All right, derivative of the first. Actually, I got to put a big old chunk here. Derivative of that x is 1 times the second, which is x squared plus 1 to the 1/2 power. Okay, plus the derivative of the second. So the 1/2 comes forward. You get x squared plus 1 to the negative 1/2 power times the derivative of what's inside, which is 2x, times the first, which is x. Okay, so that's what I have. Now I've got to put all this together, okay? So in the numerator, we have x squared plus 1 to the 1/2 power plus, I have 1/2 times 2x. The 1/2 and the 2 cancel, and then I've got that x times another x. So that leaves me with x squared times my x squared plus 1 to the negative 1/2 power. All of that is over x times x squared plus 1 to the 1/2 power. Okay, that TV is very loud. You're enjoying a concert. Think of it that way. Okay, because I'm dividing two things by the denominator, I'm going to show it as a split. Okay, so I'm going to show it like this because it'll be easier to tell what's going on. Plus x squared times x squared plus 1 to the negative 1/2 power over x times x squared plus 1 to the 1/2. Okay, so I split it in two. All right, looky here. These two cancel, and you're left with 1 over x. That's nice. Okay, over here, because I have a negative exponent, that means I need to bring that expression down here, and it becomes positive 1/2. Okay, so you are basically multiplying something by itself. Or just think of it as you're adding exponents. 1/2 plus 1/2 gives you 1. Okay, so you've moved that, so that's no longer there. You have x squared on top. You have x on bottom times, this becomes x squared plus 1 to the first, right? Because you're adding the 1/2 plus another 1/2 gives you 1. Okay, you can cancel an x out of the top and bottom. So now I have 1 over x plus x over x squared plus 1. Now to match what they have in the back of the book, they did like the foreign exchange program. Okay, so they would have said, all right, take that x squared plus 1 and multiply this by it. Okay, that gives me that. Over x times x squared plus 1. And then over here, you would multiply this by x. So you get x squared over x times x squared plus 1. And then when you combine the numerators, you got an x squared plus another x squared is 2x squared plus your 1 over that x times x squared plus 1. And that's your final answer. Or you could have had what was in blue unsimplified. Okay, that's 31.